And welcome back to another episode of the Influence Economy podcast. I'm your host, Shana Davis. I'm so glad that you're here today. But before we get started, I would love if you would do me a favor. So, wherever it is that you are listening to this episode, I want you to take a screenshot. With that screenshot, I want you to post it on LinkedIn, tag me, and then I just want to hear your biggest aha moment or your biggest takeaway from this episode. And the reason why I do that is because far too many leaders don't know how to cultivate and build the external influence that I think the new world demands. And the more times that these episodes are shared, it will expose them to the signals that they need to develop in order to lead better. So I appreciate you being willing to do that. So let's start here. AI didn't just change how companies operate. It changed how leadership is evaluated, not internally, externally. And most leaders are still communicating like the audience is inside the building only, when the audience that actually matters is watching from the outside. The market, the media, investors, customers, talent, they're all listening. And here's the shift most leaders haven't fully clocked yet. In the AI era, leadership messaging is no longer about keeping people informed. It's about shaping perception in real time because perception is now performance. And when everything is changing this fast, clarity becomes the signal that determines whether leaders are trusted or quietly written off. And this episode is about leadership messaging in the AI era, not from an internal comms perspective, not from a change management lens, but from the lens that actually determines outcomes, and that's external influence. Because the leaders who win in this era aren't going to be the ones who adopt AI the fastest. Sorry to bust your bubble. They're the ones who communicate their position the clearest. So let's start off by like naming the environment that we're in. AI, it collapsed the distance between what happens inside a company and how the company is judged externally. Decisions that used to stay internal now become headlines. Experiments turn into screenshots, half formed ideas get interpreted as strategy, and suddenly, leadership messaging isn't just communication anymore, it's reputation management. So, what you say, what you don't say, how fast you say it, how clearly you frame it, all of it is now part of your external leadership signal. And this is where so many smart, capable leaders are losing ground. Because when things feel uncertain, leaders default to one of three messaging traps. They go silent, they get vague, or they get noisy. I'm going to say it again. They go silent, they get vague, or they get noisy. Signals, or let me say it this way, silence signals avoidance, vagueness signals confusion, and noise signals insecurity. And none of those build trust. And in the AI era, trust is the only thing that compounds. Here's the hard truth: the external world does not expect leaders to have perfect answers about AI, but it does expect leaders to have a point of view, a perspective, a framework, a way of interpreting what's happening. Where is the industry going? What do people need to be aware of from your perspective of the leader? Not just what your company is doing and what it's built and what it stands for. That's great, but who the heck are you as the leader? You mean to tell me that you're deeply entrenched in this industry and you have no narrative about what's going on? You have no point of view? Your internal comms team has taught you to only be able to talk about the company and its products and its values and your education and your experience of what school you went to? No. When leaders fail to provide that, the narrative gets written for you by journalists, by analysts, by LinkedIn commentators, by competitors. Clarity is how leaders retain narrative control. And clarity does not mean certainty. And this is where I think so many people get stuck. I work with so many companies that are usually at around Series B or higher. Sometimes they are in startup mode a little bit sooner than that. But I see them get stuck all the time is because they think, oh, we just got to be clear. We just have to have clarity. We just have to convey clarity. And then everybody will just be like so certain and understand and be assured. But clarity isn't about predicting the future. It's about positioning yourself inside uncertainty in a way that feels grounded, intentional, and credible. Strong leadership messaging in the AI era answers three external questions, whether you intend to or not. Do you understand what's actually changing? Do you have discernment or are you chasing headlines? And can you explain your thinking without hiding behind buzzwords? That's the bar now. This is especially true for senior leaders and founders whose visibility extends beyond their company. Your LinkedIn presence, your media quotes, your conference panels, your investor updates, all of it blends into a single external impression. Is this someone I trust to lead in complexity? And it's not just for the founder anymore. Now, the CTO, the head of engineering, the head of information technology, roles that used to only have to influence well internally are now being required to influence well externally. You're having to have conversations with potential investors. You're having to have conversations with clients about how what you're building is going to revolutionize their industry. Media is interviewing you. You have to have a presence on LinkedIn, right? So no longer is your strong product and your internal team enough to be successful. You also have to think about how you are building trust, credibility, and authority outside of the organization as well. And here's where what some call executive presence, and yes, that is part of it, but here's where that's fundamentally shifted. Executive presence used to be about how you showed up in the room, like your confidence, your polish, how you command the conversation, the clothing you wear, and that definition is outdated. Executive presence today is about how you show up in the world, and it's not just about how you look. It's no longer just a personality trait, right? It's actually a skill that can be cultivated and built. So it's about how you frame complexity publicly, how you speak about AI without hype or fear, how consistently your words, decisions, and signals align. Presence is no longer physical, it's narrative. And AI has made weak narratives painfully obvious. So let me explain what I mean by clarity, because this is not about simplifying the issue. Clarity is not about dumbing things down. It's not pretending that things are stable, and it's definitely not rushing to comment on every development. Clarity is about doing three things exceptionally well. First, clarity anchors people in what you stand for, even as tools change. Because AI is moving fast and everybody knows that. So, what people want to know is, excuse me, what doesn't change when everything else does? Your standards, your values, your definition of quality, your boundaries. Leaders who fail to articulate this create external anxiety because when the world can't tell what you're anchored to, they assume you're drifting. Externally, that looks like unclear positioning, inconsistent messaging, eroding trust. Clear leaders say things like, this technology changes how we work, not how we decide. This increases efficiency, not at the expense of judgment. This expands possibility, and we're clear on where we draw the line. Those statements aren't technical, they're interpretive, and interpretation is leadership. Second, clarity separates signal from noise. AI has created a content economy fueled by panic and prediction. Every week, AI will replace this, AI will kill that, this changes everything, jobs are going away, yeah. Leaders who simply repeat those narratives, they don't look informed, they look reactive. Externally influential leaders do something completely different. I say they synthesize because they say things like, here's what actually matters in our industry. Here's what we're paying attention to. And here's what we're intentionally not chasing right now. That last part is powerful because strategic restraint is a credibility signal. When leaders can articulate what they're not doing and why, it tells the market they're thinking, not scrambling. That's what investors trust. That's what media respects. That's what talent wants to follow. And third, clarity creates coherence across platforms. Now, this is where leadership messaging quietly breaks down. What a leader says in an interview, what the company posts on LinkedIn, what executives say on panels, if those stories don't line up, people feel it, even when they can't articulate why. Incoherence erodes influence and clarity aligns the narrative. And this is why leadership messaging in the AI era cannot be fully delegated. Comms teams can support, no offense to them, I love them. PR teams can amplify, I've used them in the past, but leaders must own the point of view. Your comms person can't tell you your unique point of view on the industry and where it's going. Your PR team can't create your narrative for you and why you're so jazzed up about what it is that you're creating. Okay? So the comms and the PR teams, they support and they have a place, but they can't determine all this for you because thought leadership without judgment is just content. And content without coherence is noise. And nobody needs more content. Nobody needs more information. So now let's talk about the fear that keep leaders quiet. Many leaders are worried about saying the wrong thing about AI. They don't want to over promise. They don't want to get ahead of the facts. They don't want to be quoted out of context. So they wait. But here's the problem. Waiting feels responsible internally and absent externally. Silence can get interpreted as they don't understand it, they're behind, they don't have a stance. And in this environment, absence creates a vacuum. Clarity doesn't require bold predictions, it requires explaining how you think. Your decision making lens, your priorities, your guardrails, those things don't expire when the tech evolves. This is why the strongest leaders right now are not the loudest ones. They're the ones who help people make sense of what's happening. They're teaching people how to think, not just what to do and how to respond. I think sense making, like making sense of all of this, I think that's influence. And this matters deeply for employer brand because talent is watching how leaders talk about AI, not just whether they're using it, but how they frame it. Do leaders talk about replacement or augmentation, efficiency or value creation, speed or judgment? Your language signals what kind of future people are stepping into. And talent makes decisions based on that signal. It also matters for media presence. Journalists aren't looking for hype. They're looking for leaders who can articulate nuance, who can say, this is promising, this is risky, this is unresolved, without spinning, without hedging, without jargon, without language that nobody understands what the heck you're talking about if they're not inside of your organization. That's who gets quoted. That's who becomes a credible voice. And credibility compounds. And this is where I want to bring it back to you personally because leadership messaging in the AI era isn't just a company issue, it's a career issue. Your external reputation is being shaped right now by what you share, what you comment on, what you avoid. Your LinkedIn activity or the lack of it is part of your executive presence. And boy, oh boy, do I see a lack of LinkedIn presence in the tech world. And I get it, your head's down, you're building the product, you're creating your go-to-market strategy. But if you're silent, a narrative is being built for you. So you need to demonstrate that you're thinking. And that doesn't mean like you have to post hot takes about AI every week. Nobody's asking you to become a content machine. But you do have a lens. Can we hear about it? That you can interpret complexity for others. Can we hear about that? Because the leaders who advance in this era are not the most technical, because almost everyone is good at technical, right? You're a CTO, for goodness sake. You're a VP of engineering. You're a tech founder, right? You're a startup founder. So it's not about, who is the most technical in this area. They're the most trusted interpreters. That's who's going to advance. So here's a simple framework you can use immediately. Before you speak publicly about AI, here's what I want you to ask yourself. What am I helping people understand better? What confusion am I reducing? What trust am I reinforcing? And if the answer is none, don't say it yet. Clarity always serves the audience. And here's the paradox: the more uncertain the environment becomes, the more influential clear leaders become. Not because they eliminate uncertainty, but because they help others navigate it. That's the role now. Not visionary, not prophet, interpreter. So if you're a leader navigating AI right now, here's what I want you to remember. Your influence is not determined by how innovative you sound. And I know that might be counterintuitive. It's determined by how coherent you are, how aligned your messaging is, how grounded your point of view feels, how consistently you show up across environments. In the AI era, influence isn't about having the loudest vision. It's about being the leader people trust to interpret reality. And that trust externally is what protects reputation, attracts talent, builds credibility, and creates long term advantage. So if this episode resonated, share it with another leader who's navigating visibility and influence right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do, because this evolution of influence, executive presence, leadership in public is exactly where this show is headed. So I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.